Marhaba, and welcome to Your Property Pulse, Knight Frank's dedicated real estate podcast for the Middle East. I'm your host, Faisal, partner and head of Middle East research. Today, we're going to unpick Saudi Arabia's tourism and hospitality landscape. The kingdom's grand ambitions of attracting 30 million visitors means the hotel room development pipeline has swelled to the largest in the world. The guests on our show today include Turab, who heads up our hospitality and leisure team, as well as Dan, who looks after our hospitality valuations across the region. Thank you, gents, for joining us today. Our latest analysis has shown that some 310,000 keys are due to be completed by the end of the decade, which is likely to be the largest hotel pipeline ever seen in the region. That's pretty incredible. So let's dive straight in and get the experts' views on the hospitality market in the kingdom. So to start off, can you tell us how Saudi Arabia's hospitality market is doing at the moment? I mean, how is it coping in the post-COVID landscape? Turab, maybe we can go to you first.
Thank you, Faisal. I appreciate it. Thank you. And these are very exciting times for Saudi market. Hospitality is thriving. Post-COVID, I think UAE, Saudi, these markets handled COVID very well and recovered quicker than many of the international markets. Far East is still struggling, not fully open. London, Europe, and the US partial open and just opening up. So they did a good job. They opened up very quickly. In last September, Riyadh and the major city got open and they did very well. The only thing that was left was religious tourism in Mecca and Medina, which was still, because of the huge volume, the market was not fully opened. But thanks to the local authorities, the work they did, they managed to set up a system where in February they opened the market. For Makkah, Medina, with Ramadan, it was open, which was a big boost. It elevated the overall level of tourist inflow, religious tourism and activities. So as of today, if you ask me, it's fully now back in action. And certain markets are back to post-COVID numbers in terms of ADR and occupancies. As a matter of fact, March, April did very well, even better than the 2019. So overall, yes, they are back in action. They are back to track, and I think we are looking forward for much better results in the coming quarters.
Okay. Wow. What about you, Dan? What's your take on the state of the market at the moment?
Well, sort of reflecting what Turab has said, we've seen a big bounce back, particularly in Dubai, in much of the luxury segments. There's been almost a sort of resurgence in performance, well exceeding 2019 performance. I think going back to sort of Saudi Arabia, we are seeing now some increasing occupancies coming back, and particularly in Riyadh. I think Jeddah is, let's say, a little bit further behind the curve in terms of its recovery profile, but it's still recovering well. Riyadh in particular, the occupancy now, I think in 2021, it was even higher than it was back in 2019. So there's been certainly a resurgence in the return of corporate travel, particularly in sort of late 2021 and early 2022. So it does show good signs for the sort of recovery of the demand for the market. Rate, I think, has been possibly more under pressure. And obviously the huge supply increases that we've been talking about are going to play a big part in the future performance of the markets.
Okay, fine. So it sounds like we're firmly in recovery mode for the hospitality sector at the moment. So let's look a little bit further ahead. You know, where is the market going, and what can we look forward to? Turab, maybe we can start with you on this one. So what are your thoughts on the sustainability of the planned growth in the hotel room supply? You know, oversupply can really quickly become an issue. So should investors and developers be concerned?
I think I'm a very firm believer of anything which is well planned, which is well prepared and well thought through. it somehow works. And these tourism plans and hospitality plans are really well planned. If you look at it, it's not only one angle where you are just bringing the inventory in. No, you're developing the infrastructure. You're bringing the new airport. You have opened 49 different countries visa on arrival, which was never happened in the past. You are opening a new port for cruise ships. As a matter of fact, it's a whole new setup for the ports to receive the international big cruises. You're launching a new airline. Every city is getting its airport. So when you see all these activities, it's not one-off hotel supply. It's a very coordinated, well-planned, setup. If you look at the organizational setup in the Saudi tourism sector, there is one entity called Saudi Tourism Authority. It has no other job except day in, day out promoting Saudi tourism abroad to different destinations. So they are doing a great job. I was just in ATM last month, and one of the most aggressive campaign was to the Saudi Tourism Authority, and well received by the world. Same goes to the world, the Germany tourism show and the London tourism exhibitions, where Saudi tourism is playing a very, very aggressive role. So it's a well-planned, well-coordinated system which will bring some positive results. And already they are coming, but you will see more result when the mega projects start delivering gradually, which is due now already Diriyah, and then after Diriyah, the Red Sea will start giving the properties to the market, and ULA is already has shared it. So it's a very well structured and planned setup, which will be, in my opinion, it should be sustainable. If it doesn't give you 100% results, you might get 70, which is great.
Okay. Dan, what's your take on what's planned?
And again, it's sort of linking to what Turab said about the giga projects. They're going to be the first things that are going to be coming online. It's going to be a showcase for the kingdom to be able to say that they can do high-end tourism projects. But as well as the sort of high-end tourists, there's also the general urbanization that's happening across Saudi Arabia, with the flow of people moving into the cities. It's going to be sustaining the demand for, let's say, the more of the mid-market segment, and that's why we're seeing some more mid-market products coming into the market now. So there are big macro factors that are happening across the kingdom, which are going to be sustaining the domestic tourism. And that domestic tourism, as well as corporate domestic tourism, is going to be kind of a big part of the sustaining of the demand for Saudi in the next 10 years. In my view, actually, the sort of more high-profile international tourist that is going to be sort of coming to the Red Sea and all of the other bigger, higher-end luxury hospitality projects are possibly going to be 3 or 4 years away at least before they actually really start coming in bigger numbers. I think it's almost driving the domestic demand first, and actually encouraging Saudis and local people from the region to get into these giga projects and start spending money there. And that possibly we'll see the international flows in a few more years, slightly after. But as Turab said, the infrastructure development as well as the hospitality product itself is just it's staggering. New airports, and the regulatory changes as well. The encouragement of corporates to be having their HQs based in Riyadh, to be able to sort of trade here. It's great for the region to have such strong competition to Dubai from Riyadh, to be able to sort of sustain the kind of investment in the region and the success of the hospitality sector eventually. It's a success of the entire country and the entire economy. And obviously the tourism will feed off that, and hopefully it should lead to some success for the entire industry.
Okay, so it doesn't sound like there's much in the much in the way of us to worry about what's being planned in terms of the size of the supply pipeline. But surely there are issues that keep both of you up at night. I mean, what are the downside risks to what's being planned? Dan, why don't we go to you first?
Well, yeah, for me, the sort of short and medium term risk of the supply. This is I think the big danger factor for the continuation of the good performance of hotels in Saudi Arabia generally, is that how quickly can that supply be absorbed? We're talking huge numbers here, and plus then the giga projects adding huge scale to those numbers. Can the market sustain demand in terms of occupancy first? I mean, if occupancy starts to decline, then there's real problems. But I do think that the price competition that we've been seeing in the last few years across the market is going to continue. There will be pressure on rate in the next 2 to 3 years at least, as we absorb the supply. But then hopefully the supply pipeline will calm down and slow down, and then it'll be a matter of the cyclical nature of hotel markets recovering again and starting to improve performance when we see these big macro factors coming through, the urbanization and the increased tourism, etc.
Okay, fine. Turab, you earlier talked about how the Saudi Tourism Authority is working to try and bring in more visitors to the kingdom. I mean, how is the country going to turn itself into a global tourism magnet? You know, is that, what are your thoughts really on that 30 million tourist target by 2030? Do you think that's attainable?
These targets are very thrilling targets. They're very aggressive targets. Some of these numbers have never been achieved by anybody in the past. But having said that, and then you see all the activities going together towards this goal, even if they don't achieve full, they achieve it partial, it's a big success. It's a big success. And they will gradually succeed in it, because the good news is, being here, seeing what is happening, the tourism is not focused on a couple of cities like many parts of the world. You focus on key cities, you miss there are 13 regions in Saudi, as you know, and there are 13 different plans for each state is in parallel progressing. So there's a central plan, and then there's a plan for each state. And the beauty of it is each state is different from one another. If the one is a desert, then other is a mountainous region. The other is where there's a snowfall, and the other is a metropolitan Riyadh and Jeddah, and there's a religious tourism. So they got everything. So that's the beauty of it. If one slows down, there is another area segment which will pick up, and the tourism will flow throughout the year. So this huge overall the size of the country and diversity and what they have to offer, it will help to make it sustainable, and also it will help to drive towards those, if not 30 million, if close to it, it will somehow it will reach to those numbers.
Okay. So let's just change gears slightly. So we know that the kingdom has one of the largest hotel development pipelines in the world right now, and quite a lot of that is focused on the 4 and 5 star segments. But what kind of hotel rooms do we need today, Turab? And what should the hotel supply pipeline look like in the future? What are the rooms that are in most demand right now, in your view?
I was working in the past on a tourism advisory to a couple of international destinations, where they focus only on certain segment. And in the long run, they suffered when you're only focusing on certain segment. If that segment shakes somehow, somewhere, your whole system gets disturbed. Here, luckily, not luckily, it's a well-planned, basically, process where they are focusing on all different areas, different segments. Is it a religious tourism? Is it a business? Is it a MICE? Is it a leisure? So they are in a very well-balanced way. They are dividing it in a very, is it a cruise ship? Is it a big events where they are trying to host international event? Is it a sports event? So they are trying to balance it for future. So there is, there is a somehow all these segments chip in and play their role to become a greater destination. So, in that context, it looks quite positive in the long run.
Okay, fine. And what about the green agenda? Are developers and operators responding to the increased demand for more sustainable holidays, sustainable hotel rooms? What are you seeing on the ground? Let's go to you first, Turab, and then Dan, perhaps you can talk a little bit about what impact that might be having from a valuations perspective.
With the green agenda, if you look at Vision 2030 document, if you read the document, there's a full section elaborating on this area. So it is part of the government vision to work on it. Plus all their partners globally and regionally. Is it an international hotel operator? Is it a developer? Is it you name it? With the international expertise, they bring in that element, which is part of their overall philosophy. So you have internal intentions, you have plan, plus you are collaborating with a partner who are already working along those lines. So together, I think it will move as elsewhere in the world it is moving in. So to me, it looks in a safer hand and is going in the right direction. It might slow down a little bit, but overall it looks in the right direction.
And in terms of how that all affects the valuation perspective, for me, I've always wanted to be seeing Middle Eastern hotels and new developers build more solar panels on their roofs and things like this. I think it's the most obvious solution to potentially reducing energy demands is hotels and owners perhaps implementing solar energy solutions. I think in the region at the moment, it's very difficult to quantify and say that certain hotels are actually really doing major things that are actually sustainable and that have a visible effect on value, or let's say a marked effect on value. But I think the way the world is going, the regulation side of things is going to be the real cost for owners in future. And it's not going to come possibly from their own solutions of saving energy in buildings. It's actually going to come from the governments that are going to tax them higher and fine them potentially for not achieving certain targets and things like this. So it's in a way the drive and the demand for owners should be the sort of threat of increased cost in future from perhaps outside sources, and that those solutions should be implemented in anticipation of those changes in the next 5-7 years. But I think that hotels are really at the forefront of this. They're very exposed to social media and to young people. They're very fashionable. They're very exposed in the market. So it's a great opportunity for hotels to be showcasing their green credentials.
Okay, fine. So let's now look a little bit further into the future and talk a bit about the outlook for the sector. So Turab, how do you think the sector is going to fare this year?
I think as long as the oil prices are doing good, it will give enough cushion for the kingdom to pour it into mega projects and overall developments. If the real estate, which will keep the real estate momentum going on, if that wheels keep moving on, the market will do good. The overall hospitality and tourism sector will do good because now the projects are finishing from the planning stage to the development. in the development stage, it will bring a volume to these cities. So Saudi itself will do great during that time. If this oil prices can sustain to a certain level, it will do good to not only Saudi but also UAE. Egypt is gonna do good. So the region together is pulling in a very together in a positive direction.
Okay. Dan, what's your view on the outlook for the hospitality sector this year then?
If anything can be sustained like Dubai's performance perhaps in the first 6 months of this year or the last 6 months, and we can continue this recovery in demand that we're seeing across the region, then that's going to be at least one big thing achieved. I think the other major point is operating costs for hotels. Are they going to escalate? I know in Saudi Arabia we're talking about, let's say, some big things that are driving costs higher. Saudization programs, inflation, general cost increases. The bottom line of the hotel business is going to be affected just as much by cost control as it will be by sort of RevPAR improvements and increases and demand from urbanization and tourism. So for me, it's that cost control and what's going to happen in the next sort of 18 months to see how these hotel businesses are going to recover from the effects of COVID. Because during COVID, a lot of them, of course, implemented big cost reduction strategies that were very effective, and they cut their costs. And a lot of those hotels have maintained those cost savings. So they've taken lower baseline cost levels into 2022, and will they be sustainable? Will they be able to sustain those low levels of costs, or will they have to sort of increase, and that's going to affect the bottom line? And that's one of the things I think that's going to be interesting to see pan out in the next 12 months.
Okay, fine. Well, look, both of you are experts in your respective fields. So if you had $100 million, Dan, what kind of hotel would you build in Saudi, and why?
This is an interesting question. I think I would like to, if I had that much money, and it's obviously multiple hotels for the type that I would do, which is small, possibly funky, appealing to the young, mid-market product, affordable and modern, simple, but with apartments as well in the secondary cities around Saudi Arabia. So I would certainly avoid the big two cities, but I would probably say smaller assets of that kind of quality in the secondary and tertiary towns. I think if the urbanization continues across Saudi in the next 3 or 4 years, the young population of Saudi Arabia, which is huge, is going to really be ready to start spending money in hotels. And I think having apartments and hotel rooms is going to be an attraction for them. So that's what I do with the money. And I'd probably build 6 or 7 for that amount of money.
What about you, Turab? Would you also follow in Dan's footsteps with these boutique hotels for millennials?
It's something very close to my heart. I very much believe on it. It's a wellness resort. Wellness is after COVID is something which everybody's concerned on. Is their personal well-being, their family's well-being, their loved ones' well-being. So for me, a wellness resort with a very specific wellness treatment. Not surgeries, not like this, but it's just to revive somebody's health mentally, physically. Is it a special diet? Are there some, special treatments that are required? And as a matter of fact, there's no such resort in the region. As even in Dubai, UAE, as a matter of fact, in Egypt, there's nothing. There is one under construction somehow in Abu Dhabi, but we lack it. So it's needed. Plus, it's a need of an hour too. So I will go for wellness, and I will invite you guys as well as my guest. We are stressed. You are stressed. Let's spend a week over there.
Okay, fine. All right. Well, look, we're just about out of time. So there you have it. A golden age of hospitality awaits us based on what we've heard today from our experts. And I can't wait to holiday in some of these amazing hotels both of you are going to build in the kingdom. So join us again soon for the next episode of Your Property Pulse. But until then, thank you and ma salam.
Right.